working with substance abuse clients. Very fortunate to have Pat because she actually presented at the mid-year conference for religion and spirituality, which is on the APA side of their religion and spirituality research. So I'm very fortunate that Pat was available and that she wanted to do this. She actually has a master's degree in developmental psychology as well. And she's actually interested in looking at these issues from a developmental perspective. So you will see that woven throughout her program today. So I consider Pat to be a friend of mine. So if any of you get out of line, you will be swiftly removed. But otherwise, I really just encourage you to relax, have fun. I know Pat's got a great program for you, and I am shirking all of my duties to stay for it. So Pat, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome. If you can keep passing the paper and markers, we're going to have an interactive activity in just a minute or two. So today I'm going to be talking about counseling Asian Americans on suicide, a comparison of suicide between Hong Kong Chinese and Asian Americans. We're going to look at suicide rates, adolescent suicide attempt rates, and suicide methods among Hong Kong Chinese and Asian Americans. Asian Americans rank third in suicide in the U.S. The Hong Kong suicide rate is higher than Asian Americans and is decreasing, so that's good news. I'm going to show you through the research the predictive and preventative potential of data. So I want you to consider this. Wong, Stewart, Klassen, Lee, Rao, and Lam in 2008 suggests suicide research from Hong Kong, one of the most urbanized cities in Asia. We have a glimpse here of this photo. May provide a glimpse into the future of other urban Asian areas. In other words, what is going on in Hong Kong, we can learn from as predictive of what could happen in other urban areas, especially in the U.S. From the pastoral side, depression and hopelessness can be harbingers of suicide and attempted suicide. So we want to pay attention to our Asian American clients' depression and hopelessness. I'm going to share 8 distinct risk and protective factors and recommended interventions to challenge our clients' depressive and hopeless thinking, feeling, and being. Now we're going to do our interactive activity. If you could take your paper and pen and just for a few seconds, well, a minute or so, think about a cultural distinction you have that you'd like everyone to know about or that is easily misunderstood. So as you get started, I'm going to share with my cultural background. I have Lithuanian culture and I have Hong Kong Chinese culture from my husband, Z, that we've been to get married 18 years. And what do these two cultures have in common? Food. Food is very important in both cultures. My great aunts would come from Pittsburgh bringing coolers of food and cook for us in Maryland where I grew up. Delicious stuffed cabbages, kibasi, vegetable soup. So then fast forward to when I meet Z, and I become introduced into the fine world of Cantonese Chinese food. We are fortunate to go to Hong Kong every 2 or 3 years to be with family, and the food there is fantastic. Some of the best Cantonese food in the world. And very fresh, that's the key in Hong Kong. You think, well, how can an urbanized city have fresh food? Well, they are so passionate about their food that that's essential. So you go shopping, pick out your protein, go get your veggies. When you come back, and I'm vegetarian, so it's a little hard to say this, but your protein is now ready for you to take it home, and it's fresh for you to cook up. So if anybody has something they'd like to share right now about their culture that you want us to know about, I want to open that up. So who'd like to go? Okay.
Just recently I was discussing with someone, a client who was Irish, and he was trained in Ireland in an English major, but he studied dialects. And I said that broke into an Irish road with him. And I said, laddie, you know what I mean? And he went on, and I spoke with him a little bit, and he got joined in. And then he said, you're from the Cooley clan in Northern Ireland, just like that. And that was an amazing thing. And then I looked up the Isle of Cooley and Cooley Mountain are right there, which I'm going to see next August, Lord willing. But it was a trip tremendous awakening, quickening. And the impact of your dialect that I'd never heard anything, I didn't know that I had. So.
Who else?
And
What's the
almost
share?
a microcosm, as this fits. My family's culture is to be politically active and world knowledgeable. So there's always been the expectation that we would all be active in issues of the world. Our daughter's 21, a social work major at Temple, and she said, what else could I do? But the awareness that she spoke about that was, and we had a long conversation about it. She said, one of my first protests marked in 3rd grade, but that discussion, as you said, the culture of our family has been, to my grandparents, you will be active, you will participate, you will not be naive, has really shaped, I guess we're on the 5th generation now of persons. My great-grandmother was a suffragette who was jailed. So I'm thinking about the part of culture when we think about, but that part of our culture has really shaped a brother who's a lawyer for the Hmong's. My sister is a MBA for a private school. My nephews are doctors. I'm just thinking about how it really did weave the culture without even realizing how it was a cultural expectation, a cultural norm, not an expectation.
Who else?
My cultural background is Caribbean, mainly Trinidadian, but also Barbadian, with Portuguese, Chinese, Irish, Caucasian, Venezuelan, and Indian descendants, all of which were born in Trinidad but migrated from the other countries. And even here at Loyola, I've found it strange when people look at me, they automatically assume that I'm African American. But I'm American, and yes, descendants way back were African, but there's a lot of differences in the Black American culture than the culture where I come from.
Yes.
We just spoke about that 1 minute ago. We just spoke of exactly what you say. Even when you go and fill a form,
What do you fill out?
what do you fill out?
I check other now.
It's like
because there's so much.
But the other thing too with culture is language. Every time I have to speak, I have to think in like two other languages before I translate that into English that's going to be acceptable. Yeah. So my mind has to work very fast. You see, it's working a little bit. That's why sometimes we speak slowly.
Wow.
And it's even things that we say, it's different words that I use, and sometimes my Black American friends would be like, huh, what'd you say? Oh, that must be a Trinidadian thing, and then I have to fix it, and translate it accordingly.
Just what you were saying about language. My grandparents came in the 1930s from Cyprus, the Greek side, not the Turkish side. And now what's unfortunate is that my mother and her sisters also, it was like their secret language. They would literally speak Greek, and but they didn't pass it down to us. So I feel like it's part of our heritage that we're missing because we're losing. We still have the food, of course, and other traditions, but that's a part that I've tried to learn on my own, but it's very complicated language when you're coming from English, different alphabet and everything. So I think that it's almost like the opposite, where I feel like I'm losing it. Yeah.
Anybody else want to share? Yeah.
Irish, and not only proud of our ability to memorize and tell stories, but not always confined of them being true. Or at least it didn't actually happen in my day. And not just known for how much we drink, but in particular for our generosity and our love of life.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, great.
I'll tell you a funny one, that I'm a about religious. And I'm in a community that was founded in the States, not in Europe. So we always were like considered the girls that had one foot in the world. So when I lived upstate and taught up there, all the other communities that had origins in Poland, some of them, and one in Czechoslovakia, they used to call us up to do all the stuff they weren't allowed to do. Like they'd call us up and say, hey, listen, we have a birthday party today and the cake is in the bakery, but we're not allowed to go shopping on Sunday. So would you girls run out and get the cake? So we were considered like this, you know, new breed. But the other thing about us that's kind of funny is that we're very Irish American, our community. There's a few Germans and Italian heritage, but mostly Irish American. And a couple of years back, one of the sisters in leadership sent this sister to me because she had been in psychological care for the last like 30 years. And the leadership was a little concerned that, you know, after 30 years she was no better than the day she went. So they said, maybe you could sit down with her, Suzanne, and figure out like what's really going on. So I talked to her for about an hour and a half, and I had my own diagnosis by that point in mind. But I said to her, well, sister, what are they treating you for? And she said, my diagnosis is that I'm ACOA. I said, your diagnosis is that you're an adult child of an alcoholic? And she said, yes. I said, sister, we're Irish American. We're all
Okay, well, what struck me was that I grew up in a family culture, but my life experience have changed the culture that my children grew up in. I grew up in New England, and in my family there was a tremendous emphasis on education and learning, all that business, but also on heritage. My father was half English, half German. My mother was half English, half Native American. And that was a part of our family culture. Then my husband and I traveled to Southeast Asia for 6.5 years. And so the culture of my family became very, very much affected by Southeast Asian culture, particularly in terms of food. And I still cook Southeast Asian food at least 2 or 3 nights a week, which is very unusual in the area that I live in. So I just thought that was something a little different.
Yes. Anybody else? Yes.
My culture, I have Mayflower blood in me, and you know, basically everybody came over. I'm also a New Englander, so I know. I know. You know, that's like basically I grew up WASPy, but you know, in growing up WASP, you know, you have a lot of wonderful things. You know, you have an emphasis on, you know, proper deportment with people, you know, proper actions, you know, all that kind of stuff. Also, you know, high emphasis on education, all that kind of stuff. But also, you know, you have kind of a domineering attitude that comes with it. And one of the things that I did was I took up bagpipes as a hobby. So I belonged to a bagpipe band. One of the things I did was, one of the questions you always get asked when you're a bagpiper, besides the one question that you can never answer as a bagpiper, which is what's under the kilt. Well, I'll tell you the answer, socks and shoes.
That's recorded.
The other question is, what, you know, they ask, are you Scottish? And, you know, part of being, you know, British in background, you know, the whole dominating the world at one point is I just say, well, you know, I'm actually British in origin, but, you know, we took over the Scots, so it's our bagpipes now. That didn't go over well with my other bandmates. You're Scottish? You're Scottish? Call me Sassenach. which means form.